Did you know the moveset for Ash's Charizard in the black and white anime is actually a subtle reference to Lance's Charizard from the Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal games? In the Generation 2 games in the Elite Four Champion Battle, Lance will use a Charizard against you consisting of a moveset of Flamethrower, Wing Attack, Slash, and Hyper Beam. It's a pretty decent moveset, but in the black and white anime when Charizard returned, it was shown to have forgotten moves like Seismic Toss and Outrage and replaced them with Slash and Wing Attack. Upon first seeing this change, many fans went, "Why?" This seemed like a bad change, however, this is actually a reference to the same moveset that Lance used in the Generation 2 games, aside from Hyper Beam being replaced by Dragon Tail. I think it's actually a pretty cool reference, and now knowing this little detail, I'm not as mad about it. But what do you think? Do you know that aside from Pikachu, there are only 2 starter Pokemon that Ash actually got from a professor? In Unova, Ash got his Oshawott from Professor Juniper. Oshawott took a strong liking to Ash, and Juniper let Oshawott go with Ash. In Kalos, Ash's Froakie came directly from Professor Sycamore. He got this right outside the lab as Froakie took a strong liking to Ash after protecting it after the incident with Team Rocket. Aside from that, every other starter Pokemon that Ash has owned either came from a previous trainer in the cases of Charmander, Chimchar, and Tepig, or it was wild, as in the cases of Squirtle or Litten, or it came from the care of some other caretaker, such as in the case of Bulbasaur or Ash's Turtwig. So despite how many starter Pokemon Ash owns, he's actually only gotten 2 directly from a professor. Did you know there's a little Easter egg hidden in the order that Ash caught his Unova starter Pokemon? In the Unova region in the black and white anime, Ash first caught Oshawott. That was his first Unova starter. Afterwards, he would find Tepig, and that would be his second Unova starter. And then lastly, he would get Snivy, making his trio now complete, with Snivy being the last Unova starter that he caught. This is actually the reverse order in which Ash caught his Kanto starters. First was Bulbasaur in the Hidden Village, then Charmander on top of that rock, and then lastly was Squirtle when he took it from the Squirtle squad after bonding with it. I just think it's a really neat Easter egg that the Unova starters were caught in the reverse order to the Kanto starters. Did you know there's a hidden detail in the moveset of Ash's Snivy? In the black and white anime, Ash caught Snivy and its moveset was Vine Whip, Leaf Blade, Leaf Storm, and Attract. This is actually a reference to the moveset of his past starter Grass-type Pokemon. There's Vine Whip, a move used by both Bulbasaur and Bayleaf. There's Leaf Blade, the signature iconic move of Ash's Sceptile. Leaf Storm is the iconic move of Ash's Torterra, and then for a bit of uniqueness, Snivy got Attract, and I'm not sure why the black and white anime was obsessed with that move. But nonetheless, I think it's a neat detail that Snivy's moveset actually pays respect to Ash's past Grass-type starters. What did you think about Snivy's moveset in this little detail? Did you know in the anime certain Pokemon regions can have more than 8 gyms? Back in the Kanto saga, Gary somehow earned 10 gym badges, but 6 of them are unknown. I speculate these could belong to an Ice-type gym, a Dragon gym, a Ghost gym, a Fighting gym considering the Fighting Dojo used to be the gym of Saffron City, a Flying gym, and a Normal-type gym. In the Black and White series, when Cameron is showing off his badges, he's got 3 unknown badges which could belong to a Dark-type gym, a Psychic gym, or a Steel-type gym. When Sawyer shows off his badges in XY, it seems Kalos also has a Fire gym, a Flying gym, and a Water-type gym. And then in Diamond and Pearl, it seems that when Barry shows off his badges, Sinnoh also has a Fire gym, Flying gym, and what could be a Poison or Psychic-type gym. I wonder what other gyms are unknown in the Pokemon anime. Did you know Ash owns 8 Pokemon that are also owned by gym leaders? Ash's Pidgeot, even though he released it, is also a Pokemon used by the flying gym leader of Johto, Falkner. Ash owns a Torkoal, which is also the ace Pokemon of the fire gym leader, Flannery. Another member of his Hoenn team is Swellow, which is also owned by Winona of Fortree City. Ash owns Halucha, which is also owned by the gym leader B of the Galar region. It may be unevolved, but Ash's Buizel is in the same evolutionary line as Crusher Wake's Floatzel. Ash owns an Unpheasant, which is also on Skyla's team in Unova. Ash owns Lucario, which is also owned by Maylene. And lastly, he also owns a Lycanroc, and even though they're a different variant, it's also owned by the Kahuna Olivia. Did you know this little fun fact about Ash's Pokemon? Did you know Ash Ketchum owns 6 different Pokemon that are also owned by champions? Ash owns a Charizard, and this is also the signature Pokemon of Champion Leon in the Galar region, and it's also owned by Alan from the Kalos region, and even though he's not a champion, he is champion level. Ash caught a Noivern in Kalos as well, which is also on the team of Drazna, an Elite Four member. Ash caught a Dragonite in Pokemon Journeys, which is the signature Pokemon of Lance from the Kanto region. Also from Kalos is his Gudra, which is also on Diantha's team as the Kalos champion. A third member from Kalos is his Hawlucha, which is also on the team of Diantha as well. And lastly is his Incineroar, and while Kukui is not an official champion, he's the stand-in champion for Alola. And he owns Incineroar as well. Did you know this fun fact about Ash's Pokemon? Did you know Paul owns 9 Pokemon that are also shared by champions and gym leaders? Paul owns Electivire, which is also owned by gym leader Volkner. Paul's Ninjask is a Pokemon owned by Frontier Brain Brandon. Paul owns Gyarados, which is the ace Pokemon of Champion Lance. Paul recently caught a Garchomp, which is also the ace of Champion Cynthia. Paul owns the pseudo-legendary Metagross, which is the ace of Champion Steven Stone. He has Hariyama in his possession, which is the ace Pokemon of Frontier Brain Greta. Paul is shown to own an Aggron, which is also on Champion Steven Stone's team. He owns a monstrously strong Drapion, which is the ace of Elite Four member Aaron. And lastly, he also owns a Gastrodon, again another Pokemon on Cynthia's team. Did you know this little fun fact about Paul's Pokemon? Do you know that Ash and Paul's rivalry in the Diamond and Pearl anime actually makes a reference to the rivalry between the Player and Silver in the Gen 2 games? Ash and Paul's rivalry is one of the best in the entire anime, and we have Ash who loves and cares for his Pokemon and he'll win with them no matter what, but we have Paul who only cares about winning with strong Pokemon and how good they can be in battle. That is exactly the same as the rivalry between the Player in Gen 2 and the rival Silver. Silver only cares about his Pokemon if they are strong enough to win, and he'll get mad if his Pokemon cannot win. We see the same thing happen between Ash and Paul as they battle out their ideals on the battlefield. Eventually, by the end at the Sinnoh League, Ash gets through to Paul, and Paul will begin to treat his Pokemon with more care and respect. We even see it in Pokemon Journeys, where Paul blatantly tells Electivire to go play with Pikachu and Ash's other Pokemon. This is such a nice reference to see between these two rivals. Go has caught a lot of Pokemon over the course of Pokemon Journeys, but did you know that there are 12 that he shares with Ash, whether they are fully evolved or not? They are the following: Frogadier, Butterfree, Halo, Heracross, Boldore, Grimer, Raichu, Sandile, Fletchling, Anki, Krabby, and Hoothoot. What Pokemon do you wish Go would have caught? Did you know there's one region where Ash actually doesn't have a full team of Pokemon? Of course, we know a full team of Pokemon consists of 6 Pokemon, but in Alola, he actually only has a team of 5 Pokemon. We know his full team to be Rowlet, Pikachu, Incineroar, Dusk-Lycanroc, Melmetal, and Naganadel. However, Naganadel stayed in its home world for a good portion of the Sun and Moon series, only returning to help out against Guzzlord and fight off against Kukui at the end of the Alola League. But if Naganadel didn't return, he'd only have a team of 5 Pokemon. And this is rather interesting because then he probably could have brought back an older Pokemon to fill his last slot and balance out his team diversity and typings. We probably could have seen Pokemon like Buizel, Crocodile, Hawlucha, or even Noivern return to duke it out against Kukui and his Pokemon. But what do you think about this little fun fact? Ash Ketchum has caught quite a lot of Pokemon over the course of his journey, but did you know that out of all his Pokemon there are only 3 that have not had a full moveset? And all 3 of these Pokemon have only had 2 moves in their debut series. They are Lapras with Ice Beam and Water Gun, Muck with Body Slam and Sludge Bomb, and most recently, Melmetal in Sun and Moon with Flash Cannon and Double Iron Bash. These 3 Pokemon are all pretty iconic in their own right, but yet have not had a full moveset. I've actually made YouTube shorts discussing the full movesets that I would give to Lapras, Muck, and Melmetal respectively. But how would you fill out the movesets for these 3 Pokemon? Ash Ketchum has trained and raised a lot of Pokemon over the course of his journey, but did you know that after all this time, there are still 9 Pokemon he owns whose movesets have never changed? Those Pokemon are Muck, Lapras, Primeape, Scraggy, Snivy, Palpitoad, Gible, Hawlucha, and Dracovish. These Pokemon either have incomplete movesets or know 4 moves but never learned any new moves. What do you think about this fun fact, and what moves would you like to see these Pokemon learn? There's a secret hidden Easter egg in episode 7 of Aim to be a Pokemon Master that you may not have noticed. This episode focuses on the return of Ash's Lapras and the gang helping out a Wailmer stuck in a hole. Now at first glance it seems like they're just recreating the Marshtomp episode of Pokemon Journeys that nobody liked, but they don't, and instead give us such an awesome reference to an old school Pokemon short that played right before the first Pokemon movie, Pikachu's Vacation. This short eventually unfolds into Charizard getting stuck in a stone structure and he can't get out, so he's reliant upon the help of everyone else that's there to get him unstuck. The imagery of the ropes that they use, everyone tugging on Charizard to get him unstuck, is the exact same thing that we see in this episode with all the Pokemon and all of the characters tugging on the vines of Torterra to get Wailord unstuck from the cave that it is stuck in. This is literally such a great callback to a short that I believe many people may have forgotten about. But what do you think about this Easter egg?
Team Aqua and Team Magma are the evil villainous teams of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. But was Team Aqua actually hinted at 2 generations prior in the first Pokemon movie? Let's take a look. In the introduction to the first Pokemon movie, Ash battles a random trainer in the beginning of the movie. This trainer has a vest and some shorts on. Nothing crazy, but not until you look at this trainer's bandana. It's a red bandana with a white logo on it, and it looks very similar to the logo of Team Aqua. Now I doubt they were teasing these evil teams so early considering this was during Generation 1, but it's just very interesting to see that this kind of pirate and rough aesthetic that this trainer has with how he acts and his outfit, and also the symbol on his bandana, it's just very reminiscent of Team Aqua, especially the comparison between the logos. But what do you think? Just a coincidence, or is this a neat little Easter egg?
Did you know the Rising Volt Tacklers were actually foreshadowed during the ending of Pokemon Journeys? After the Masters 8 tournament concludes, Ash can be seen getting a call from Go in his room, and right next to him is a peculiar painting. Now originally we all thought this painting meant that Ash was going to travel to Paldea, and boy were we wrong about that. But this painting still foreshadows Generation 9. We can see a ship going across the ocean, and in Generation 9 in Pokemon Horizons, we have a ship, the Brave Asagi, used by the Rising Volt Tacklers to travel across the Pokemon world. And with this series really exploring new horizons and traveling across the Pokemon world at the forefront of the series, it wouldn't be a stretch to say that this painting directly foreshadowed the presence of the Rising Volt Tacklers in Pokemon Horizons. But what do you think about this? Pokemon Horizons has teased something quite interesting in regards of Liko and Roy as of episode 7. In this episode, they partake in some special training with Captain Pikachu after being brutally defeated by Ametheo in the previous episode. The special training does improve their battling abilities, and Liko and Roy even have 2 battles with themselves in this episode, with Sprigatito versus Fuecoco. This is rather interesting as it seems to be foreshadowing a potential full battle between Liko and Roy at the end of the series, or at least a rematch with their Pokemon fully evolved, being Skeleturge versus Meowscarada. This is rather interesting because it seems to parallel the contest battle that Ash and May had at the end of the Advanced Generation with Sceptile versus Blaziken. Are we potentially going to see another battle similar to this with Liko and Roy at the end of the series? It seems to be possible, but let me know your thoughts. Did you know Ash Ketchum loves the move Aerial Ace? It's one of the most iconic flying type moves and a great priority move that doesn't miss. But ever since its debut in Generation 3, Ash Ketchum has used this move on every team up until Sun and Moon. In Generation 3 it was used by Swellow, in Gen 4 Staraptor and Quilava would use this move, in Black and White Crocodile and Unfezant would be using Aerial Ace, and then in Generation 6 Greninja would be his final Pokemon to use the move Aerial Ace. After that, no Pokemon in his Sun and Moon team or his Pokemon Journeys team would use the move Aerial Ace. I kinda missed this move, but what did you think about this neat little detail? Did you know Raihan is a lot stronger than we originally thought? In the recent Pokemon Presents, we were introduced to an evolution of Duraludon, being Archaludon. Which means that Duraludon is no longer a single-stage Pokemon and can further evolve. It has more power to unlock. This also confirms that it's now a Pokemon capable of holding an Eviolite. This means that Raihan, the same trainer capable of rivaling Leon, the world monarch prior to Ash, the same trainer that is on the same footing as Elite Four members, the same trainer that was able to almost make it into the Masters 8 in Pokemon Journeys, he is now even stronger because this means that in Pokemon Journeys, he was using a Pokemon that wasn't fully evolved. He was making people sweat with a Pokemon not fully evolved. This is absolutely wild. This just further proves just how strong of a trainer Raihan truly is. Did you know Ash and Paul's full battle in the Sinnoh League actually makes a little reference to Ash versus Lieutenant Surge in the original series? During their full battle in the Sinnoh League, we eventually get to the point where it's Ash's Gliscor versus Paul's Ninjask. Ninjask ends up using agility, making it far faster than Gliscor. Gliscor is way unable to keep up with Ninjask's movements and ends up getting swatted around with Fury Cutter. This is actually very similar to Ash's battle against Lieutenant Surge. Ash is the one to use agility, making Raichu the one who is far too slow to keep up with Pikachu's fast movements, eventually making Raichu dizzy, and Lieutenant Surge is forced to just go with an all-out attack. Very similar to what Ash actually does with the Underground Flare Blitz, an all-out attack, being able to slow down Ninjask. So it's a very subtle reference, possibly quite unintentional, but I think it's just really cool that these two battles have very similar moments. Here are 5 facts about Bayonet you may not have known. Bayonet's English name is a combination of Bane and Marionette, since it is a vengeful animated puppet Pokemon. Mega Bayonet holds the record for being the lightest Mega Evolution, weighing in at 13 kilograms or 28.7 pounds. Bayonet is based partially on a haunted doll, but also in Japanese this is known as a tsukumogami, which is an animated puppet. It also stems from the belief in Shinto animism, where everyday objects or dolls can come to life and be possessed. Mega Bayonet holds the record for the highest base attack stat of all ghost types. In Gens 5 and 6, Bayonet can learn Gunk Shot via breeding, but not Move Tutor. Did you know these facts about Bayonet?
Pokemon can have many different forms, such as Alchemy or Cast form. Even legendary Pokemon like Giratina can have an Altered and an Origin form. But to this day, Arceus hasn't revealed its true form. Now you're probably thinking, this is Arceus right here. We've seen its form before. Yes, but this is not the entire Arceus. It's revealed in Legends Arceus at the end that Arceus will give a part of itself to the player character, heavily implying that this is only one part of Arceus and that this is the form it's chosen to take to reveal to the player. That the true form of the entirety of this Pokemon is not known, probably because we cannot comprehend its true form as it is revealed in a blinding white and yellow light at the beginning of the game before we get to Jubilife Village. Maybe one day we'll see the true form of Arceus, maybe in the upcoming Pokemon Legends Z to A.
Did you know there's one Pokemon game where the mythical Pokemon Mew can actually serve as the final boss of the game? Outside of the final boss battle against Arceus, literal god in Pokemon Legends Arceus, back in Generation 1 there was a game called Pokemon Snap. In recent years it would be revamped into new Pokemon Snap, but on the N64 the original Pokemon Snap had 6 areas, and if you made it to the final area known as Rainbow Cloud, you would have the opportunity to battle Mew in a sense. You would need to photograph Mew, but Mew is inside this crystal ball that you would need to break through. If you broke through it, you would have the chance to photograph Mew and be awarded 2,500 points for doing so, the highest amount of points any Pokemon can give in that game. So essentially, Mew does serve as the final boss of this game, because if you are able to photograph Mew and report it to Professor Oak, you will win the game, making Mew and Arceus the only mythical Pokemon that are able to serve as final bosses. Fire Blast is one of the most iconic Fire-type moves in the entirety of Pokemon, but in Japanese, this move is called Now, the reason this move is called Daimonji, or Great Blaze when translated directly into English, is because of its direct real-world inspiration of the Kyoto Fire Festival in Japan. This is a festival in order to celebrate the dead, to honor them and pay respects. But when this festival is over, around the evening time, the kanji symbol for fire is etched into the mountain. This mountain is actually called Daimonji-san, or Mount Daimonji. Because of the fire symbol, the same symbol that we see in the anime is etched into this mountain. This is where the name Daimonji, Fire Blast, comes from.
Was the Pokemon Sun and Moon anime foreshadowed previously in Pokemon I Choose You? Back in 2016, we got the I Choose You movie to celebrate 20 years of Pokemon. In this movie, we get an alternate telling of Ash's original journey with Pikachu. He only gets Butterfree and Charizard in this film, but it's still a pretty good story. It's fun and very enjoyable. But there is a character named Cross. He owns a Lycanroc and an Incineroar. During this movie, Ash will battle against his Incineroar. I believe that this was perfectly foreshadowing the future rivalry that Ash's Torracat would have with Kukui's Incineroar in the Sun and Moon anime, and on top of it, even hinting at the rivalry between Ash's Dusk Lycanroc and Gladian's Midnight Lycanroc as well, since Cross owns both an Incineroar and a Lycanroc. Maybe they just wanted to introduce some new Sun and Moon Pokemon a bit early via this movie, or maybe they were actually teasing the Sun and Moon anime and Ash's major plot points.
Did you know every Lucario trainer in the Pokemon anime actually uses a very unique moveset? Similar to Ash, Alon, and Leon's Charizards all sounding uniquely different, no two Lucario trainers will ever use the exact same moveset. Eileen from Diamond and Pearl uses a moveset of Aura Sphere, Force Palm, Metal Claw, and Bone Rush. In Unova, Cameron's Lucario knows Circle Throw, Force Palm, Copycat, and Aura Sphere. Karina's Lucario knows Power Up Punch, Bone Rush, Metal Sound, and Aura Sphere. Fukui's Lucario actually only knows 3 moves in its battle, being Close Combat, Extreme Speed, and Dragon Pulse. And then finally, Ash's Lucario knows Aura Sphere, Bullet Punch, Reversal, and Double Team. Very nice attention to detail that no two Lucarios know the same moves exactly, and that they all stand out. What do you think about this little fun fact? Ash Ketchum, Alon, and Leon. These are the 3 most iconic and noteworthy Charizard trainers in the Pokemon world. But did you know that even though they use the same species of Pokemon, they all sound a little unique? Here is Ash Ketchum's Charizard. Now let's listen to Alon's Charizard. And finally, Leon's Charizard. Did you hear the difference? Let's listen to all 3 in a row. Ash, then Alon, then Leon. As important and iconic as these trainers are, I think it's a great attention to detail that all 3 of their Charizards sound completely unique from one another. But what do you think about this little fun fact? Did you realize this?
Did you know Pikachu's iconic Volt Tackle attack was actually foreshadowed all the way in the beginning of the advanced generation? There's 2 specific battles I'd like to recall upon. Firstly is the battle where Ash catches Tailo. There's a moment where Pikachu uses Quick Attack charged with electricity as it runs along the water to crash into Tailo. This very much looks like a precursor to Pikachu using Volt Tackle later in the series. Then later in Ash's first gym battle in the Hoenn region against Roxanne, her Nosepass uses Zap Cannon. The animation is very different in the beginning of the advanced generation, but Pikachu takes that Zap Cannon attack head-on and charges into Nosepass again, looking very similar to Volt Tackle that we would see later in the series. I've mentioned in my review of the Hoenn anime that the writing really stepped up in this generation, and this is a perfect example. Really crazy to think that they were foreshadowing Volt Tackle all this time.